His daughter disappeared for 2 days and returned holding the hand of an Apache woman. "Dad, we will protect her." The town was small, with only a few streets, some local shops and wide open fields stretching far beyond the houses. Life here moved slowly, and people knew each other by name. John had lived there for most of his life, growing up playing in the dusty streets and learning about mechanics from his father. Now, he ran his own small auto repair shop. It was not a rich life, but it was steady, and John liked it that way. John's life revolved around his daughter, Emily. She was 10 years old, full of energy and curiosity. Emily had bright eyes that seemed to notice everything around her. She was not a quiet child who stayed inside all day. She loved the outdoors, climbing trees, watching the clouds, and exploring the small forests and canyons near their home. She had always been independent, sometimes too independent for her father's liking. Emily was fascinated by Native American culture. She had learned about the Apache tribe from books and from listening to local elders who still shared stories from the past. She loved their traditions, their courage, and the way they lived in harmony with nature. She often asked John questions about their customs, their clothes, and their language. John answered as best as he could, though he did not know much beyond the stories he had grown up hearing. He encouraged Emily's curiosity, but he always reminded her to be careful, especially when exploring alone. That day, the sun rose bright and warm over their little town. Emily had finished breakfast quickly, excited for a day outside. She asked John if she could go and explore the nearby hills. John hesitated. He knew the hills were safe enough, but Emily sometimes wandered further than he expected. Still, he wanted her to enjoy her childhood, so he said, "Just stay where I can see you and don't go too far." Emily nodded eagerly and ran out, her small backpack bouncing on her back. She waved to John as she disappeared toward the hills. John went about his morning work, fixing a car that had been brought in the night before. He wiped his hands on a rag and thought about how fast Emily was growing up. He remembered when she was a baby, learning to walk and talk, and now she was already so independent. He smiled, feeling proud and even a little worried, as any father would be. Hours passed, and the sky slowly turned from bright morning blue to the warmer tones of afternoon. John noticed that Emily had not returned yet. At first he thought she was just enjoying herself and would come back soon, but as the sun climbed higher his worry grew. He called out her name, walking toward the hills where she usually played. "Emily, Emily, where are you?" His voice echoed through the empty fields. No answer. John's heart began to race. He ran to the nearby neighbors asking if they had seen her. They shook their heads. Panic started to set in as he realized that Emily had been gone longer than expected. The town, usually peaceful, suddenly felt tense and quiet. People began gathering, sensing something was wrong. They formed a small search group, walking through the hills, calling Emily's name. Some went into the forests, others along the riverbanks, and a few climbed the rocky slopes to get a better view. Meanwhile, Emily was far from the town. She had wandered into a part of the hills she had never explored before. The trees were taller and the rocks were steeper. At first, she enjoyed the adventure. She was curious and brave, and the beauty of nature excited her. Birds flew overhead, and she listened to the sound of the wind through the trees. But soon, she realized she had gone too far. The hills looked unfamiliar, and she could not see her home anymore. Fear began to creep in, and she wished she had stayed closer to the town. Just when Emily felt lost, she noticed a small path winding between the trees. She decided to follow it, hoping it would lead her back to familiar ground. After walking for some time, she saw a small figure in the distance. It was an elderly woman, sitting quietly near a fire outside a simple cabin made of wood and stone. Emily approached cautiously, not knowing if the woman would be friendly. But the woman looked up and smiled warmly, her eyes kind and welcoming. The woman introduced herself as Yana. She was an Apache woman, living quietly in the hills, away from the town. Her voice was soft but confident, and Emily immediately felt a sense of safety around her. Yana seemed to understand the land in a way Emily could not, pointing out plants, animals, and hidden paths. Emily listened intently, fascinated by the stories Yana shared about the land, the stars, and the history of the Apache people. Back in the town, John was organizing more volunteers to search. The sun was lowering in the sky, and fear was now fully gripping him. He could not imagine Emily alone and scared in the hills. Every sound made him jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. He felt helpless, knowing the hours were passing and his daughter was still missing. Meanwhile, Emily stayed with Ayana, learning about her way of life. She felt safe and curious, forgetting for a moment the fear of being lost. Yana taught her simple survival skills: how to find water, how to identify safe plants, and how to listen to the signs of nature. Emily admired the woman's knowledge and strength. Despite being far from home, she began to feel a deep respect for Yana and a desire to protect her as well, sensing that her new friend had lived a life many in town would not understand. As evening fell, Emily realized she would have to return. She did not want to worry her father, and she wanted to share the stories she had learned. Yana smiled and took her hand, guiding her through the narrow paths back toward the town. Emily felt proud of her courage and excited to see her father, though she also felt a little sad to leave her new friend behind. When they approached the edge of the town, John saw them. His heart leaped. There was Emily, holding the hand of the woman he did not know, safe and unharmed. He ran to her, tears in his eyes, calling her name. Emily looked up at him, smiling, and said clearly, "Dad, we will protect her." John was confused at first. He did not understand what she meant. But as he looked at Ayana, he saw the strength and wisdom in her eyes, and he realized his daughter had formed a connection that went beyond fear or danger. He knelt down, hugging Emily tightly, promising silently that they would both ensure Ayana's safety and respect. That night, John sat by the fireplace with Emily, listening as she recounted her adventure. She spoke of the hills, the animals, and the stories Ayana had shared. John listened in amazement, realizing that his daughter had grown braver, wiser, and more compassionate in just 2 days. He also realized that this experience would change the town forever, teaching them lessons about courage, understanding, and protecting those who are different. And so, what began as a day of fear and worry turned into a story of connection, learning, and the bond between a father, his daughter, and an unexpected friend. John knew that Emily's curiosity and bravery, though sometimes frightening, were qualities he would always cherish. And he silently promised to honor her wish. They would protect Ayana just as they had been protected by her kindness. The town was quiet but tense after Emily's disappearance. News had spread quickly, and neighbors gathered outside their homes, whispering and worrying. Everyone knew John and Emily. They were part of the small community, and no one could imagine a child wandering off and being missing for hours. Parents were worried for their own children, and the town sheriff organized a search party to comb the surrounding hills, forests, and streams. John, however, could hardly think straight. He felt a deep, gnawing worry in his chest. He ran from place to place, calling Emily's name, asking anyone he met if they had seen her. His hands trembled as he held onto the hope that she had just wandered off somewhere safe. But the longer the hours passed, the more the fear grew. His mind raced with questions. Where could she have gone? Who might have found her? Was she frightened or hurt? Meanwhile, Emily was beginning to understand the vastness of the hills she had entered. She had always thought of the hills as part of her playground, but now she realized just how big and wild they were. The trees towered above her, and the sounds of birds, rustling leaves, and distant animals surrounded her. The little streams and narrow paths twisted in ways she had never noticed before. A sense of adventure mixed with nervousness filled her, as she tried to find her way back home. It was then that Emily saw the figure of the Apache woman, Yana, sitting quietly near a small cabin hidden among the trees. At first, Emily hesitated. She did not know who this woman was, but something in Yana's eyes made her feel safe. The woman smiled warmly and waved her closer. Emily took a deep breath and stepped forward. The air around the cabin was calm and peaceful. Birds chirped and the scent of earth and firewood filled her senses. Yana spoke gently. "Hello, little one. You are far from home. Come, rest for a moment." Emily felt comforted by the calmness in the woman's voice. She sat by the fire while Yana offered her water from a small clay cup. Emily drank slowly, noticing how different the air tasted and smelled in the hills compared to the town. Everything seemed clearer, quieter, and alive in a way she had never experienced before. Yana asked Emily how she had come to the hills. Emily told her about the town, about her curiosity, and how she had wandered too far while exploring. Yana nodded as she listened, showing no anger or judgment, only understanding. She explained how the hills could be both beautiful and dangerous for someone who did not know them well. Emily listened intently, realizing that the world around her was bigger than she had imagined. Over the next few hours, Emily learned a lot from Yana. The woman shared simple survival skills, like how to find clean water, how to identify safe plants, and how to move quietly in the forest without disturbing animals. Emily tried to remember everything, repeating the lessons carefully. Yana also shared stories about the Apache people, how they had lived in harmony with nature for generations, how they respected all living things, and how they valued courage and kindness. Emily was fascinated. She had read about these things in books, but hearing them from someone who had lived close to the land made them feel real and important. Back in town, the search continued. Volunteers climbed hills, waded through streams, and called Emily's name repeatedly. The sun was slowly lowering in the sky, and worry turned into fear for many. Some parents held their children closer, thinking about what could happen if they were ever in Emily's place. John stayed at the center of the search, organizing people, but inside he felt a heavy weight of panic. He thought about the last time he had seen Emily, running happily toward the hills, and now she was gone. Meanwhile, Emily and Ayana moved deeper into the hills. Emily began to see the world differently. The hills were not just a place to run and play, they were full of life, secrets, and lessons. She noticed the small footprints of animals, the way the wind whispered through the trees, and how the sunlight changed the color of the rocks throughout the day. Yana explained that paying attention to these small details was important. They told stories about the land, about courage, about respect, and about the bond between people and nature. Emily felt a sense of connection she had never felt before. Emily also started to notice Yana's strength. The woman moved gracefully, climbing rocky paths as if she belonged to the hills. Her hands were skilled and steady, showing years of experience. Emily admired her courage and independence. At the same time, she felt a strong desire to protect Ayana, to ensure that the woman would be safe from harm. She thought about her father and how he would want to protect her. This thought made Emily feel even more responsible and brave. As evening approached, Emily realized that she had to think about returning. She was starting to miss her father and the safety of home. Yana noticed Emily's concern and smiled. "You have learned a lot today," she said softly, "and you have grown braver. Soon it will be time to return to your father, but remember what you have learned here. Always carry respect and courage with you." Emily nodded, understanding that this experience would stay with her forever. That evening, Emily and Ayana prepared to leave the hills together. Yana took Emily's hand and guided her along hidden paths, showing her the safest way back. Emily felt confident walking beside her new friend, knowing she had learned skills and lessons that would help her in the future. Every step brought her closer to home, and every step reminded her of the bond she had formed with Ayanna. Meanwhile, John's worry had grown unbearable. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, and Emily was still not home. He had already imagined many scenarios, none of them comforting. His friends tried to console him, but he could not focus on anything else. Every shadow, every sound of the hills made him flinch. He wished he could be everywhere at once, searching for her in every corner. Just as darkness began to fall, a small figure appeared on the edge of the town. John's heart leapt. He ran toward her, calling her name. It was Emily. She was safe. But she was not alone. Holding her hand was a woman John had never seen before. She looked calm and confident, yet there was a softness in her eyes. John felt a mix of relief and confusion. Who was she? And why was Emily holding her hand? Emily ran into her father's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "Dad," she said, her voice full of excitement and relief. "We are safe. We will protect her." John looked at her, puzzled. "Protect who, Emily?" he asked. Emily pointed to Ayanna standing quietly, watching the reunion. John's mind struggled to understand, but he realized that his daughter had made a friend, someone she respected deeply and wanted to protect. The town watched in awe as Emily and Ayanna arrived. People whispered, some curious, some worried, but John felt a new sense of understanding forming. His daughter had faced fear, learned courage, and formed a bond that went beyond what he had expected. Emily's words, "We will protect her," held a promise that touched John's heart. He realized that sometimes protection was not only about keeping someone safe from danger, but also about respect, care, and understanding. That night, back at home, John and Emily talked about the day. Emily told her father everything she had learned from Ayanna, the stories, the lessons, the survival skills, and the importance of kindness and respect. John listened carefully, realizing that Emily had grown in ways he had never imagined. He felt proud and amazed at her bravery, but also grateful to Ayanna for keeping her safe. John knew that this experience had changed all of them. Emily had learned about courage, wisdom, and respect. John had learned about trust, letting go, and the importance of listening to his daughter's heart. And the town had learned that sometimes, people who seem different can teach the most important lessons about life and humanity. As Emily drifted to sleep that night, she thought about the hills, the animals, and the stories Ayanna had shared. She felt brave, wise, and connected to the world in a new way. And she knew that she would always remember this adventure, and that she and her father would do everything to protect their new friend, just as she had promised. The next morning, the town was buzzing with curiosity. Emily's return had been a relief, but questions lingered in everyone's minds. Who was the woman she had brought back? Why had Emily called her someone to protect? John Whitman knew he could not ignore this. He needed to understand Ayanna, the woman who had cared for his daughter and kept her safe during those frightening hours. Emily, however, seemed completely at ease. She jumped out of bed with excitement, eager to share everything she had learned from Ayanna. She spoke of the stories, the animals, the lessons in nature, and the courage that the Apache woman had shown her. Her words poured out quickly, sometimes overlapping in her excitement, and John struggled to keep up. He listened patiently, realizing that Emily's experience had changed her. She was no longer just a curious little girl. She had grown stronger, braver, and more aware of the world around her. Ayanna, meanwhile, stayed quietly in the corner of their modest home. She had agreed to come with Emily to the town, but she did not seek attention or praise. She was calm, her presence gentle but firm. John noticed that she carried herself with dignity, and that her eyes held wisdom that went far beyond her years. He could see why Emily had been drawn to her so quickly. The woman seemed connected to the land, to the stories of the past, and even to the small town in ways John could not yet understand. John invited Ayanna to sit at the table, offering her breakfast. She smiled politely and accepted, but her attention remained focused on Emily. She asked questions, not in a way that seemed intrusive, but as if she genuinely wanted to know how the girl was feeling. Emily explained everything in detail, how she had wandered too far, how she had felt scared, and how Ayanna had shown her kindness and safety. Ayanna listened carefully, nodding occasionally, and Emily felt proud that she had made a connection that mattered. But as the morning continued, John noticed something unusual. Some neighbors and townspeople had gathered outside his home, whispering quietly among themselves. Their curiosity was clear, but there was also a hint of suspicion. Some of them had never met Ayanna, and her presence, different from anything they were used to, made them uneasy. John realized that this was not just a story of adventure and courage. It was becoming a story of misunderstanding and judgment. Determined to protect both his daughter and their new friend, John decided to introduce Ayanna properly to the town. He walked outside with Emily and Ayanna, greeting the neighbors and explaining the situation. "This is Ayanna," he said firmly. "She helped Emily when she was lost. She kept her safe. She is a friend, and we will protect her just as she protected my daughter." His voice carried authority and sincerity, and some of the neighbors nodded in understanding, though others remained cautious. Emily held Ayanna's hand tightly, feeling a sense of pride. She wanted everyone to know that the woman had done nothing wrong, that she had only shown kindness and courage. Emily's confidence impressed John. She had faced fear and uncertainty, and now she was standing up for someone else, showing bravery not just in adventure but in compassion. He realized that this was a turning point, not just for Emily, but for himself and the town as well. As the day progressed, John and Emily decided to spend more time with Ayanna, learning from her and understanding her way of life. Ayanna began to share more detailed stories about her experiences growing up close to nature, about her family, and about the traditions of the Apache people. Emily listened with wide eyes, asking questions and trying to remember every detail. John, too, found himself fascinated. He had never thought much about the history of the land he lived on, but now, through Ayanna's stories, he began to appreciate the depth and richness of the past. However, not everyone in town was ready to accept this new friendship. Some parents whispered to each other, worried about their own children. Some town officials were cautious, wondering about the presence of someone unfamiliar living so close to the community. A few people even questioned whether Emily should have wandered into the hills alone. The town's peaceful routine was being challenged, and John felt the pressure of responsibility on his shoulders. He knew he had to act carefully to protect Emily, Ayanna, and the trust of the community. To address this, John decided to organize a small gathering at his home. He invited a few neighbors, community leaders, and friends to meet Ayanna properly. He wanted them to see for themselves that she meant no harm, and that her connection with Emily was based on trust, respect, and kindness. As people arrived, Emily proudly guided Ayanna through introductions. She spoke clearly and confidently, explaining how Ayanna had helped her and why she wanted to protect her. Her sincerity touched many, and slowly, some of the town's skepticism began to fade. Ayanna, for her part, remained humble and patient. She answered questions politely, showing no signs of impatience or frustration. She explained her way of life calmly, emphasizing her respect for nature and people. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. People began to understand that she was not a threat but a guardian in her own right. John watched the scene unfold with pride and relief. Emily had brought a bridge between two worlds, the town and the hills, the past and the present. Despite the growing understanding, John could see that challenges were still ahead. Some people were hesitant, unsure if they could fully trust Ayanna. Others were curious but cautious, wanting to know more before they accepted her presence. John realized that this was a turning point for the town as well. Their attitudes, assumptions and prejudices would be tested, and he needed to guide the situation carefully. He decided to work closely with Emily and Ayanna to show the community that trust, kindness, and understanding could overcome fear and suspicion. Over the next few days, Emily spent most of her time with Ayanna. She learned practical skills, how to find clean water, how to identify edible plants, how to notice changes in the weather, and also deeper lessons about patience, courage, and empathy. Emily began to see the world through new eyes, noticing small details she had never paid attention to before. She learned to listen carefully, not just to sounds but to the feelings of others, and she began to understand that protecting someone meant more than keeping them safe physically. It meant respecting their choices and supporting them. John, too, learned from the experience. He realized that he could not shield Emily from every danger in the world. Instead, he needed to teach her values, trust her judgment, and support her courage. He also learned to appreciate the strength and wisdom of Ayanna, and to recognize the value of connecting with people who were different from himself. It was a turning point not only for Emily but for the entire family, and potentially for the town as well. One evening, as the sun began to set, Emily and Ayanna walked together through the hills near the town. Emily felt a sense of peace she had never experienced before. She knew she had been brave, learned important lessons, and formed a bond that would last a lifetime. She also realized that courage came in many forms, not only in adventure but also in standing up for others, trusting them, and forming meaningful connections. Back in town, John observed from a distance. He saw the way Emily carried herself, confident, caring, and brave, and he felt proud beyond words. He knew that the days ahead would bring challenges, misunderstandings, and hard questions from the community, but he also knew that his daughter had grown stronger and wiser. Emily had become a bridge, showing the town that courage and compassion could unite even the most different of people. That night, as Emily and John sat together in their small home, she spoke quietly about her day. "Dad," she said, "I want people to understand her. She's kind and brave and she helped me. I want to protect her just like she protected me." John held her hand, feeling the depth of her words. He realized that this moment, this turning point, was about more than just Emily or Ayanna. It was about understanding, trust, and the courage to see beyond fear and judgment. And so, part 3 of their story closed with a sense of hope and new beginnings. Emily had learned bravery, compassion, and wisdom. John had learned trust, patience, and the importance of supporting his daughter's heart. The town had begun to glimpse a larger world, one of connection, respect, and understanding. The turning point had arrived, and with it, the promise of deeper bonds, greater courage, and a story that would inspire everyone who witnessed it. The days that followed Emily's return were filled with both excitement and tension. The town was no longer just worried about her disappearance. It was beginning to notice the presence of Ayanna. People whispered as she passed, curious and sometimes skeptical. John realized that the community's attention, though well-meaning, could easily become a source of pressure or misunderstanding. He needed to be careful, ensuring that Ayanna felt safe while the town learned to accept her. Emily, meanwhile, was eager to continue learning from Ayanna. Every morning she would run to the hills, ready to discover something new. She practiced the skills Ayanna had taught her, tracking small animal footprints, identifying plants, listening to the subtle signs of nature, and even predicting changes in the weather. Each lesson made her feel more confident and independent. Yet, what Emily valued most were the stories and teachings that went beyond survival. Ayanna spoke of courage, empathy, and the importance of protecting others, lessons that resonated deeply with Emily. One morning, Emily noticed a group of children from the town hiding behind trees, watching her and Ayanna. At first, she felt nervous. She remembered how some of the town's adults had looked wary when they first met Ayanna, But instead of feeling afraid, Emily felt determined. She waved to the children, smiling warmly, and called out, "Come, you can learn too." Slowly, one by one, the children stepped forward, curiosity overcoming hesitation. They watched as Emily demonstrated the skills she had learned from Ayanna, and Ayanna shared simple lessons about nature and kindness. John watched from a distance, proud of his daughter's courage. Emily was not only learning but teaching others. She had become a bridge between Ayanna and the town's children, showing them that differences could be celebrated rather than feared. Some parents, seeing this, began to relax their concerns. They started to understand that Ayanna was not a threat but a mentor, a guardian in her own right. But challenges soon appeared. One day, while walking through the town square with Emily and Ayanna, a few adults approached them with cautious expressions. "Who is she?" one asked, pointing to Ayanna. "Is she safe for the children?" Another added, "We don't know anything about her. Can we trust her?" John stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She helped Emily when she was lost," he explained. "She kept her safe, and she has only shown kindness and courage. She is a friend, and we will protect her." The adults exchanged glances. Some nodded slowly, realizing that John spoke the truth. Others remained unsure, their skepticism clear in their eyes. John knew that trust could not be forced, it had to be earned. He decided that the best way to gain the town's confidence was through action, not words. Over the next few days, he organized small activities where Emily, Ayanna, and the children could spend time together safely under supervision. The community began to see Ayanna's kindness firsthand. As trust slowly grew, Emily and Ayanna's bond deepened. Emily learned about patience, understanding, and the value of helping others without expecting anything in return. She noticed how Ayanna treated the land, the animals, and even the smallest plants with care and respect. Emily realized that protection was not just about keeping someone safe from harm. It was about understanding their needs, respecting their choices, and standing by them with loyalty and compassion. One afternoon, a sudden storm approached the town. Dark clouds rolled across the sky and the wind began to howl. The town's children, playing outside, ran toward their homes, frightened by the thunder and lightning. Emily, seeing a small group of children stranded near the edge of the hills, acted quickly. She ran with Ayanna to guide them to safety. Ayanna taught Emily how to stay calm, move carefully, and protect everyone from the elements. Together, they led the children to a safe shelter. The town watched from a distance as Emily and Ayanna helped the children. Their actions spoke louder than words. People realized that Ayanna's presence was a blessing, not a threat. They saw the courage, wisdom, and care she offered, and slowly, suspicion turned into respect. John, standing nearby, felt a surge of pride and relief. Emily had not only grown braver but had become a leader, guiding others with compassion and courage. That evening, as the storm passed and the sun began to set, John invited Ayanna and Emily to his home. They sat together by the fireplace, drying off from the rain and warming themselves. Emily excitedly recounted the events of the day, describing how they had helped the children and kept them safe. Ayanna nodded approvingly, praising Emily for her courage and quick thinking. John listened silently, realizing that his daughter had transformed. She had faced fear, acted decisively, and had taken responsibility for others, lessons that would stay with her for life. The town, meanwhile, began to change its perspective. Neighbors who had been skeptical started visiting John's home to meet Ayanna and observe her kindness. Children who had watched from a distance began joining Emily and Ayanna on short walks in the hills, learning lessons about nature, respect, and courage. Slowly, the community began to embrace the idea that Ayanna was not an outsider, but a teacher, a protector, and a friend. Yet, the climax of this part of the story came when a small emergency tested everyone's trust and courage. One afternoon, a young child from the town wandered too far into the hills and got stuck near a rocky slope. Panic spread quickly, and the parents called for help. Without hesitation, Emily ran toward the child, with Ayanna guiding her every step. John followed closely, along with a few other adults who had begun to trust Ayanna. Using the skills she had learned from Ayanna, Emily carefully approached the child, assessing the safest way to bring them back. Ayanna instructed her calmly, showing her how to remain steady and confident. Emily took a deep breath and led the child down the slope slowly, holding their hand and reassuring them. John and the others followed closely, ready to assist if needed. The townspeople watched anxiously, holding their breath as Emily demonstrated courage, knowledge, and calmness beyond her years. Finally, they reached safety. The child was unharmed, and the parents hugged Emily tightly, tears of relief in their eyes. John felt his heart swell with pride. Emily had faced real danger and had acted wisely and bravely. The town, witnessing this, realized the value of trust, preparation, and compassion. They began to see Ayanna not just as a mysterious figure, but as a guide and protector who had helped shape a young girl into someone capable of courage and leadership. That evening, the town gathered to celebrate the day's events. Emily and Ayanna were at the center of attention, but not in a way that felt boastful. People expressed gratitude, respect, and admiration for both of them. John watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. His daughter had learned the meaning of protection, courage, and kindness. Ayanna had gained the trust of the town, and the community had learned that fear could be transformed into understanding when approached with patience, wisdom, and compassion. As the celebration ended, John reflected on how much had changed. Emily was no longer the same curious little girl who had wandered into the hills. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. She had faced fear and acted bravely. Ayanna had not only protected Emily physically, but had also taught her important life lessons about empathy, courage, and respect. The town, once wary and suspicious, had begun to embrace differences and see the value of understanding others. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she thought about the events of the day. She realized that protecting someone was not always easy, but it was always worth it. She thought about the children she had helped, the lessons Ayanna had taught her, and the trust she had earned from the town. She knew that she had changed, and that she would continue to grow stronger, braver, and wiser with each experience. John sat by her side, holding her hand. "You were amazing today," he said softly. "I am so proud of you, Emily. You have learned to protect, to care, and to lead." Emily smiled, feeling proud and loved. She knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together, that many lessons and adventures lay ahead, and that with courage, compassion, and understanding, they could face anything. And so, Part 4 closed with a sense of triumph, growth, and hope. The climax had tested everyone's courage, trust, and compassion. Emily had demonstrated bravery and wisdom. John had learned the importance of guidance and support. Ayanna had gained respect and trust. And the town had begun to see the power of kindness, understanding, and connection. Together, they had faced challenges, grown stronger, and prepared for the next chapter of their story. The days that followed the storm and the small emergency were filled with a new sense of harmony in the town. The people had begun to see Ayanna not as a stranger, but as a friend, a guide, and a teacher. Her quiet presence and gentle ways had shown them that courage and kindness could exist in many forms. John Whitman felt a deep sense of relief. The fear and worry that had consumed him during Emily's disappearance were now replaced with gratitude, understanding, and hope. Emily, as always, woke early. She ran to the hills with the energy of someone who felt both brave and important. She was no longer just a little girl exploring for fun. She was a learner, a helper, and a protector. Ayanna was waiting for her, and together they began the day with the lessons that Emily had come to cherish. Today, they focused on observing the world with patience. Gianna taught Emily to notice the small details that often went unnoticed: how the wind moved the leaves, how birds communicated, how insects and animals moved through the undergrowth. Emily listened carefully, fascinated by everything she saw. She realized that learning was not just about survival or practical skills. It was about understanding life, respecting all living things, and paying attention to the world around her. John had always hoped Emily would grow up wise and caring, but he was amazed at how quickly she was learning. Her time with Ayanna had given her an awareness and sensitivity that most children did not develop so early. Back in town, the community continued to observe the growing friendship between Emily and Ayanna. Children were joining them more frequently, eager to learn about nature, courage, and kindness. Parents, too, began to participate, seeing the value in these lessons. The town had transformed from a place of suspicion and fear to a community that embraced learning, respect, and connection. It was a small change, but it felt monumental to John, who had seen the struggle and uncertainty firsthand. One afternoon, Emily approached her father with an idea. "Dad," she said, "I want to help more people understand Ayanna. She has so much to teach us, and we can show the town that she is kind and brave." John listened carefully, seeing the determination in her eyes. "How do you want to do that?" he asked. Emily suggested that they organize small gatherings in the town square, where Ayanna could share stories, teach simple survival skills, and explain the lessons she had learned from her life in the hills. John agreed wholeheartedly. Together, they planned the first event. Word spread quickly, and by the afternoon, families gathered in the square. Children sat cross-legged on the grass, excited to hear stories and learn new things. Adults stood around, curious but cautious, eager to understand more about Ayanna and the lessons she could share. Emily held Ayanna's hand, introducing her to the crowd with pride and confidence. "This is Ayanna," she said. "She helped me when I was lost. She taught me courage, respect, and kindness, and I want everyone to learn from her too." Ayanna began to speak, her voice calm and steady. She shared stories of the land, the animals, and the Apache people's traditions. She talked about the importance of caring for one another, the value of bravery, and the beauty of observing and respecting nature. Emily helped demonstrate some of the skills she had learned: identifying plants, noticing animal tracks, and understanding how to move quietly and carefully through the forest. The crowd listened, fascinated and inspired by the connection between Emily and Ayanna. As the weeks passed, these gatherings became regular events. The town's children eagerly looked forward to them, and parents began to understand the lessons of trust, patience, and respect. Emily grew in confidence, not just as a student but as a teacher and leader. John watched proudly as his daughter guided the children, sharing Ayanna's teachings and helping them feel safe, curious, and brave. The town had transformed, and it was clear that the bond between Emily and Ayanna had made this change possible. John also noticed the deeper impact on himself. He had spent so long worrying about his daughter's safety that he had forgotten to appreciate her courage and wisdom. Watching her grow under Ayanna's guidance reminded him of the importance of letting children explore, make choices, and learn from experience. He realized that true protection did not mean controlling or sheltering someone from life. It meant teaching them to be brave, kind, and aware, and standing by them as they grew. One day, as Emily and Ayanna walked together near the hills, Emily stopped and looked around. "Ayanna," she said, "I want to always remember everything you taught me. I want to be brave and kind, and I want to help others just like you helped me." Ayanna smiled, squeezing Emily's hand gently. "You already are brave and kind, Emily," she said. "And the more you help others, the stronger and wiser you will become. Remember, protection comes from care, respect, and understanding, not just strength." Emily nodded, feeling the weight and truth of Ayanna's words. She realized that her promise to protect her new friend was more than just words. It was a commitment to understanding, kindness, and loyalty. She thought of her father and the town, and she understood that she had the power to inspire others to act with courage and compassion, just as Ayanna had inspired her. John, meanwhile, worked quietly in his auto repair shop, but his thoughts often returned to the lessons Emily had learned. He reflected on the events of the past weeks, the fear, the worry, the adventure, and the growth. He understood that his daughter had experienced something extraordinary, something that had changed her and, in a small way, changed the town. He felt grateful to Ayanna for the wisdom she had shared and for the guidance she had provided to Emily. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and Ayanna's influence on the town grew stronger. Children became more observant, more curious, and more respectful of nature. Adults learned to appreciate patience, understanding, and the value of guiding young minds with care rather than fear. John felt proud of his daughter and inspired by the way the town was evolving. He realized that this experience had strengthened not only his family, but also the community around them. One afternoon, Emily invited her father to walk with her and Ayanna through the hills. As they moved together along the familiar paths, Emily pointed out the lessons she had learned: how to notice small signs in nature, how to stay calm in uncertain situations, and how to help others without hesitation. John listened carefully, marveling at the knowledge and courage his daughter had gained. He understood that these lessons would stay with her for the rest of her life, shaping her into a thoughtful, brave, and compassionate person. At the edge of the hills, Emily paused and looked at Ayanna. "Thank you for everything," she said softly. "You helped me when I was lost and you taught me so much. I will never forget you." Ayanna smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting pride and affection. "And I will never forget you, Emily," she replied. "You have a brave heart and you will continue to grow. Remember, protecting others is not only about safety, it is about understanding, kindness, and respect." John watched quietly, feeling a sense of completion and peace. The journey had been difficult and frightening at first, but it had led to growth, understanding, and connection. His daughter had faced fear, learned courage, and inspired others. Ayanna had shared her wisdom and gained the town's respect. And the community had learned that compassion, patience, and trust could overcome fear and suspicion. That evening, back in their home, John reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the panic he had felt when Emily disappeared, the lessons she had learned, and the bond she had formed with Ayanna. He realized that life often presented challenges that could be frightening, but these challenges also offered opportunities for growth, learning, and connection. He felt grateful to have witnessed his daughter's journey and proud of the young person she had become. Emily, lying in bed that night, thought about the hills, the stories, and the lessons she had learned. She understood that protection was not just about keeping someone safe. It was about caring, respecting, and standing by them. She felt proud of the courage she had discovered in herself and grateful for the friendship she had found in Ayanna. And she knew that, together with her father, she would continue to act with kindness, bravery, and understanding. The town, too, had learned an important lesson. The community had begun to see the value of patience, trust, and compassion. They had witnessed bravery, courage, and kindness in action. Through Emily and Ayanna, the town had come to understand that protecting others was not only a responsibility, it was a gift, an opportunity to grow, connect, and inspire. And so, the story came to a close with a sense of resolution, hope, and unity. Emily had grown stronger, wiser, and braver. John had learned the importance of trust, guidance, and understanding. Ayanna had gained the respect and friendship of the town, and the community had discovered the power of compassion, courage, and connection. Together, they had created a story of protection, friendship, and growth, one that would be remembered and cherished for years to come.